All right, we are live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the channel today. Very special guest today. So, we are coming into June, and which is really the start of the political season because we have midterms coming up next year, and that is going to be especially in Georgia, that is. I think Georgia and Pennsylvania are pretty much the libertarian hotspots. We're like the center of the libertarian world next year. So I wanted to kind of bring somebody on, get him in front of you. Like these live streams are great because we can bring candidates, bring people that are involved a lot in politics and stuff, and allow you guys to ask them questions. So I brought on Ryan Graham, who is the chair for the Libertarian Party of Georgia. I hope that we're here to talk. We don't really have a set plan of what we're going to talk about. We want to kind of listen to the chat a little bit, and then we can talk local to Georgia. We can talk national. We can talk culture. We can talk whatever you guys want to talk about. There's really no set rules in my streams. So yeah. But yeah, welcome to the channel.
I will just go ahead and hello and thank you for having me on your show. I love that we're the hot spot for the libertarians right now, and I feel like it's because we did a really good job just pissing everybody off last election cycle, which is which is fantastic. Everybody should be really pissed off about politics. So I feel like mission accomplished.
That's absolutely true. I think people are kind of pissed off a little bit because of the wrong reasons. They don't really understand why they're pissed off, and they're not actually looking at the data, especially when it came to Shane's campaign.
Yeah, definitely. We had David Perdue who lost his Senate campaign. Everybody blames us, despite the fact that the race that he ended up losing his Senate seat did not include Shane Hazel. Georgia has some fun rules around runoffs where basically it requires everybody to gain to get 50% of the vote plus one in order to win, which I think is a pretty good thing. And if you don't earn that in the general election, there's a runoff. And that's what ended up happening. Shane did not make the runoff, but he did take enough of the vote from someone. I don't know who, but he took enough of the vote to stop anyone from getting 50% plus one in the general. And so everyone blames him for, everything.
Yeah. And really when it comes down to it, I mean, when you look at the numbers, I always say, I mean, anybody with a brain could see that the only reason why Perdue was even in that runoff was because of Shane, not the other way around. But conservatives want to say it was, Perdue would have lost in the general. There's no doubt in my mind, because when you look at the numbers, Shane got what, 3.4% of the vote?
And something like that, yeah.
Jorgensen only got 1.4% of the vote.
Yep.
And Biden won the state. So to me, it seems like Shane pulled more Democrat votes, people that voted for Biden, than Joe did. And that's the whole reason why the runoff even happened in the first place.
Well, all the data that I've seen, so it's really always going to be impossible to say because we can't actually see what people are doing. But from the data that I've seen based on polling and some other stuff, it really looks like our voters are unique in that a significant portion of them, probably over a majority of them, simply would not have shown up had Shane not been in the race. They would have, I voted Libertarian in every race that I had, and I basically didn't vote in any other election. I went through, I ticked all the Libertarians, and no one else deserved my vote. So I didn't vote for them. And I think that is what a lot of libertarians do. And I think a lot of people don't give us enough credit for that, that our voters typically are not showing up for either.
And I agree. And I actually questioned, if you watch my video with Austin Peterson a couple weeks ago, I mentioned this as well, because when you're talking the Caitlyn Jenner candidacy in California, there's a lot of conservatives and Republicans that are saying if it was between her and Gavin Newsom, then they just wouldn't vote. And when they tell us that we're voting for the other party or whatnot by not voting, and then they're voting, I mean, it's completely hypocritical. They're going against completely their own rules, and they rule themselves out in any future talking points that they have when it comes to those types of issues. But yeah, so it's really interesting. I do agree that libertarian, and that's where Perdue even messed up in his campaign. He arrogantly thought and actually said he owned the libertarian vote. He doesn't understand, and the GOP doesn't understand how libertarians think and how libertarians, they just won't vote if there's nobody that they feel confident. Correct. We don't vote the lesser of two evils. We vote our principles, right?
And I think you're exactly right, that they don't know, they don't understand our vote, and they also seem to not care, which is even more frustrating. So, you know, you had David Perdue, who was invited on to Shane Hazel's podcast, and you know, he had Rand Paul came on and basically said, well, you should endorse David Perdue because my record is wonderful. And we're like, well, we're not voting for you, sir. And you know, maybe we would actually have backed a Rand Paul, despite his many flaws. He is a friend of liberty, and so you know, maybe we would have done that in a way that Perdue completely is not a friend to liberty. His voting record does not reflect a libertarian viewpoint. It's probably worse than a lot of Democrats in the Senate. And so, you know, we looked at that kind of thing and we said, hey, you're not even willing to come talk to us. We're not going to promote you. In fact, we probably are going to campaign actively against you if you think it's not even worth it. And you're going to say that. Little tidbit. I actually was in contact with the Georgia GOP during that time. I was connected with David Schaefer, who's the Georgia GOP chair. And we had some conversations where I basically told him, hey, you know, if you can get Loeffler or Perdue to talk about libertarian issues, I can come out and say, hey, look, they're trying to earn our vote by talking about these things and promote them. And, you know, I basically said, but it can't be, are we allowed to cuss?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I basically said it can't be bullshit. Sorry, I don't know the rule. Everyone has different rules. So,
well, I'm not monetized, so it doesn't matter. And I'm former military, so I drop F-bombs like it's nothing.
All right, cool.
So, you know,
I basically said it can't be bullshit because we're going to call you out on that. You know, like if you sit there and say like, oh, I'm anti-spending, we're going to bring up like all of the spending bills that you approved, that you voted for. You didn't even like not show up, but you voted for them. And we're gonna talk about that, and we'll call you out on it. So, you know, we actually ended up coming down. That was when there was a cannabis act to deschedule it. What was it called? It was called something.
Well, there's quite a few, right? There's House Bill 420 was one of the major ones,
of course,
which was I believe it was the one to. It was actually the name of the act was actually regulate cannabis like alcohol. So it was like something like that.
One. There was one that the Democrats put forth in the tiny little window where they couldn't actually accomplish it, and then have not brought it up again. They blamed the loss on Republicans and then didn't bother to bring it back when they could actually change anything because they're all a bunch of liars. So, but basically, I said, hey, this bill's going through. There's a lot of problems with it, but we support it because it does this major thing. It did actually regulate it a bunch. It created a whole new government agency. It was a pretty crappy bill in terms of libertarianism, but it moved us in the right direction. And they said, hey, how about we don't support that, but what we do is we talk about descheduling cannabis. And I was like, yes, if you can get David Perdue on the record to wanting to deschedule cannabis, we will go out to our people and we will promote that. I mean, I made that deal. I was like, cool, we're not going to do any back room dealings or anything. I'll be up front. This is what's happening. And David Schaefer said, cool, I'll run a flagpole. I'll see what's going on. Never heard back from him. Of course, we never heard anything like that from David Perdue. I emailed David Schaefer a little bit later and I said, what's going on with this? And his response was, how about you endorse us and we put your logo on a mailer and it goes out to everybody and then you guys get some press that you endorsed us. And I'm like, what? Like, I can't even tell if you're joking with me right now. Like this, is silly. You know, I sent a message back that was basically like, I think you're kidding, and I don't appreciate it. So that's kind of where we ended up. Is, you know, the Republicans just think that we owe them everything. I don't know why.
Yeah, and I don't either, because it's kind of the opposite now. And libertarians are a finicky bunch, right?
You don't say.
They I mean, just and I'm bringing up the fact when Joe Jorgensen made the anti-racist comment.
Mm-hmm.
So many libertarians jumped ship at one point. I mean, and that's the problem I think we have, is that so many libertarians, they want a perfect candidate, and one flaw and they're out. They're not going to vote. Especially, and then don't even get started on the anarchists who, if it's anything but, if it's anything between, minarchist and, conservative, then it's like you're done, right?
So I'm a minarchist, but I love my anarchists. I see them as our North Star. You know, I see them as they keep us on the straight and narrow. You know, they're like, hey, but really.
Yeah, and I'm the same as you. I mean, the only thing that I believe that the government should be funding is a national protection force to secure our country from invasion, and
Oh,
that is
okay.
basically it.
I actually think we could probably handle that. Mine is criminal justice. I think we do it very poorly. I don't know what a good system looks like. The good news for libertarians is I don't have to have that imagination to figure it out. So, but I also can't figure it out in an anarchist view, how it works. And I'm sure lots of your listeners are going to jump on me and try to explain it to me. But I have read all the theories or all the mainstream theories, and I just don't buy it. I think that right now what we have is sort of this oligarchy where people with resources purchase the power and are generally controlling, criminal justice rungs where, anything that is a fine basically is legal if you're rich enough. Is sort of what the system is. I don't necessarily know how to fix that, but I don't think anarchy is that fix. So
No. Well, anarchy is it's a great thing to shoot for.
Yeah.
But it's not even just Americans you have to worry about. I think it's international pressure. I mean, yes, we have enough guns, we have enough protection for ourselves, but you would constantly be fighting off foreign invaders. That's where I'm at,
Maybe.
And then you're right. I mean, there has to be some sort of criminal justice. You know, how do how does that even work in an anarchist system um with somebody steals something from somebody else? Is it just like community based and everybody comes in? I don't know. So there's not a lot of that type of stuff that people look at. People think that, oh, you just handle it between the two of you. No, that doesn't work.
Yeah. With the national defense, I start looking at like Afghanistan, right? And like America invading Afghanistan and really just doing a terrible job of it. And I'm like, man, if the Afghan people can defend against America, imagine what Americans would do to somebody who tried to do the same thing. I mean, the urban warfare alone, would just literally decimate armies. The true meaning of decimate, literally,
Well, that's whenever you hear the gun control people saying, you really think you can stand up to the U.S. Army? I'm like, the Afghans have done it, or the Taliban's done it for what, coming up on 20 years now.
And that's us, and before that it was the Soviets, and before that it was, it's everybody. It was UK before that, right? It was the colonialists from Great Britain. So I mean, they've been doing it for ever.
Yeah, but that's the biggest issue, is because to get to a state, you kind of have to go an anarchist state. You have to go through like a minarchist state and everything like that to even get there.
Yeah.
Because communists, they want to go through the growth of government and then get rid of government process, right? That's how Marx lays it out.
Yeah.
Whereas Anarchists see it as more practical to be able to shrink government and then get, to phase it out instead of just all in and then get people used to it and then pull the government out of there, because no government's ever going to give up a power.
Right, because that's dumb. That's literally
Yeah.
never happened. It won't happen. That doesn't happen. So
but yeah, so what else do we have? Oh, so we were talking about the last election though. Kind of keep on that topic. Now, you told me you are involved in the lawsuit about ballots or for the new election law.
Yeah, so you and your listeners may have heard of the bill that is made national news about the election reform bill that Republicans passed recently, and everybody's all up in arms about, oh, you can't hand out water. So I think that that's probably a stupid thing to worry too much about, because that's probably not going to stop anybody from voting. If it does, you might not have been terribly invested in voting anyway. So, but the law is actually bad in a lot of ways. So one of the primary things is it doesn't do what they claim it would do. So, they wanted more security in the elections, and particularly in absentee ballots. And what they did was they required an ID instead of a signature, which sounds great on its face. I actually support showing an ID when you come in to vote. I'm fine with that. But absentee is a little bit different. It's really easy to steal a list or to buy a list of driver's license numbers and commit fraud that way. So it's basically it's a lot easier to go in and write in a driver's license number that than it is to actually forge somebody's signature that has to then be matched, right? You can probably forge some of them, but you're going to screw up some, and it's harder to do. So what they actually did was made it easier to forge those ballots. The other thing that they did was they removed the Secretary of State from the state election board. So there's basically there's no statewide elected official in charge of that body. And worse yet, they allow that body to take over county election boards with absolutely no due process. So they can just come into Fulton County and say, oh, you're misbehaving. And if they say why, they don't have to answer them. They can just take over indefinitely. They can take over the election board from a locality. Which that's one of the primary things we're actually challenging is that piece of it. To keep on down the line, we also are able to put in poll watchers, and part of our poll watching is when there are issues, they report it back up to us so that we can make a stink about it if we need to. If there's anything going on that's kind of weird, they basically made it so that they're not allowed to report back to us. They can only report to the precinct, the people running the precinct, which are probably the people who are up to no good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see that as a First Amendment issue. Like, how can you tell me you can't report something that's going on? And then finally, they made it illegal to look at other people's ballots. Did you vote in person here?
Yeah, I did.
So you see the new machines, it's a giant screen, and you look over and you can just see what people are doing, right? So you're glance over, you're now a felon, or you can be accused of a felony charge. So they can then take you to court for even looking over. So we've had poll watchers basically tell us we're afraid to be poll watchers now because they're going to accuse us of felonies, and we're going to have to fight that in court. So we're fighting all of those very real issues, and we think we have a pretty good shot. We're taking a little bit of a different tact. We're not saying, oh, you're a bunch of racists. We're saying, oh, you actually made it so it's less secure. It's easier to fudge the numbers.
Yeah, because this is completely different than any conversation that I've heard about the law. Because when you listen to the Democrats' talking points, when you look at the Democrat talking points, you wouldn't even think anything's wrong, right? So you look at the two talking points, you actually kind of look at what's going on, and you're like, that's not it at all. So then you just kind of drop it, right? I
Well,
mean,
and
so
what
what
they
you're
do
saying
is
actually makes sense, like with the driver's license signatures and everything like that. Those types of things make sense, but they're making it, like you said, about race
right.
and lines and stuff like that. And I can tell you, I live in one of those counties that had the long lines, and there was a long ass line the first day to vote. I came back. I never waited more than 20 minutes. Actually, I never even really waited. It was like in and out in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So on another day.
That's
So
I do
those are the
early
types.
voting. I do week 2 early voting. Georgia is actually crazy easy to vote. They do for people who don't know, there's 3 weeks of early voting where you can come in literally all day. There's no excuse absentee voting, which still exists. You can just request a ballot by mail and send it back in. There are now drop
Mhm.
boxes where there's never been drop boxes before last year, and you can still vote on the same day as well. So it's so easy
Yeah,
to vote in Georgia. It's incredibly
absolutely.
easy.
Well, and that's the other thing that the complaint is too, is because now, so there had never been drop boxes, but now they're like gonna lower the amounts. Like only every county gets like one or two drop boxes,
Right.
right? So that's what they're trying to make that about. Like, because Fulton County, Cobb County, and DeKalb, they're all gonna have less drop boxes than they had in the last election. And that's where they're trying to run the race issue and stuff like that.
And before last election, there were no drop boxes is very key
Exactly.
information that people do not like to share.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's insane because, um, I mean, I think that there are some things that were fishy in the last election and that we need to look at, like all the corrections and the Dominion voting systems and stuff like that. When you start to see some of the videos of how a poll worker can just go change a ballot like in a correction, like super easy, right?
I haven't seen that, but we
Oh,
actually campaigned pretty hard against the bill that allowed Dominion voting to come in and give their machines. We campaigned really hard for hand marked paper ballots, and the Republicans, a lot of them actually behind closed doors or like closer to it, agreed with us on a lot of the issues
mhm.
that we were bringing up, because you want them to be auditable, you want things to be traceable, you want to be able to you want it to be secure, transparent, and all that. And Dominion doesn't really do that, but they agreed with us. They basically said we're too far down this line and it's too publicized. We can't go back on our party, which is why party politics is pretty terrible. Says the head of a party. I mean, party
Yeah.
politics it creates some pretty bad scenarios, and I imagine it will create some problems with us too. I just hope that we can overcome them. But like I said, we had people that agreed with us. But Barry Fleming is the one who sponsored that bill, and he's also the one who came out and said, "Oh, everything is insecure. We have to recount. We have to do all this." I'm like, "You wrote the bill that created the system that we have now, and we fought you, and now you're saying that you're basically campaigning against yourself. You just won't say it. It's
Yeah.
terrible, and no one will listen."
um Actually, so the question in the chat is are ballot selfies legal?
They
So
are
can you take a
not.
picture with your ballot?
You
They've
cannot.
never been legal, right?
No, it's a Georgia thing, but you
Oh,
cannot do that. They will stop you. You may actually, I haven't looked into it, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. But it may actually end up being a felony based on what I was saying earlier with the new law.
well, that's what I thought it was already a felony. So
It,
I don't know.
I don't know. I know they've
Just
stopped me before.
taking pictures inside of a polling place in general, I thought was a felony.
It may very well be. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because they want
Uh,
you to. I mean, you're not allowed to do a lot of stuff inside polling places. Like, I mean, obviously campaigning stuff. Campaigning, it has to be within like what 100 feet, everything
yeah.
like that.
Well, and I'm sort of like I'm radical free speech, so I think that you should be able to, and this isn't like a primary point, and it's not something I super care about, but I think you should be able to campaign wherever you want. If they kick you off their property, then that's one thing, but it's public property as well, so they don't really have a right to do that. But you can't even wear campaign T-shirts in line. They can pull you out of line for
Yeah,
that. But I think you should be able to hand out water. I think you should be able to hand out water with campaign slogans on it. I actually don't care. I think that's totally
yeah.
legit. Who cares? Like, I think they
Yeah,
should stop being involved in what people are allowed to do for each other.
yeah, exactly. I think some of that runs into like what we saw, what was it, '08 with in Obama got elected, and you had Black Panther standing outside, voter intimidation, stuff like that. And I think that's where a lot of that comes into play. But then again, they just don't want people like changing their mind last minute, and they don't, of stuff that they don't even have time to research.
Yeah. I saw some of that with Stacey Abrams, where there was the new Black Panther Party where we're carrying guns, and it's hilarious watching people who are like big Second Amendment people being like, "No, look, they're obviously bad guys." I'm like, "What do you mean? They're just holding guns, man. Like we're for this. Like we're not just
Yeah,
again, we're not just for it when like we like the people, but I don't know if you know this, but it does seem maybe like a little racist that you only have a problem with it when there's a bunch of black dudes."
yeah. Well, and that's what you see now. The left always tries these gotcha questions when they post like the picture of like the whole black family wearing, holding ARs, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And like everybody's like, "Hell yeah, go for it.
Thumbs
Yeah, that's
up. Do
awesome.
it. This
We
is
we don't
fine.
care.
Yeah.
We just want people to have the right to do." And now the big thing is, any Second Amendment violation in a lot of ways that is almost systemic racism that they're trying to implement, because when you really look at the stats of who is really in need of some of these AR-15s and firearms and everything like that, it's people that live in gang-riddled neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the left will tell you just as much as anybody that those are high concentration of minorities.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you go by their language, that means that their gun legislations impact minorities more than they impact white people. So then that would mean that it's systemic racism, right?
Well, and the first gun control laws that were put in place were in California with the Black Panthers who were patrolling their own neighborhoods, stopping police from harassing the people in their communities. They were literally carrying their guns to stop state-sponsored oppression. And
Mm-hmm.
the state came in and tried to create laws to disarm them because it was making their job of oppressing these people a lot harder.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what they want to do, right? I mean,
Right. I mean, it was
whenever
explicit.
whenever it comes to anything that combats the state, they're all over it. They care most about it. I mean, just look at Antifa and BLM all last year compared to January 6th. Because it was against them, now they're involved and they want all these commissions and stuff like that. Well, they actively go out and stoke the fires of Antifa
Yeah, I
on
don't know. The
private
BLM
citizens.
folks, they, here in Atlanta, they set that cop car on fire, and up in Minnesota, they set the police precinct on fire. I think there was some I'm never gonna promote violence. I don't like what happened on January 6th. Well, I don't like what some
Yeah.
of the people did on January 6th. I will not give everybody credit for the bad behavior. There were plenty of people who were up there who had no idea what was going on, and were just
Yeah.
thought they were doing the right thing and were not violent. Same with the BLM and the BLM protests. I was in a BLM protest, but if you target the oppressor, it does sort of, you look at it and you say, well, maybe this makes some sense. I still don't like violence. I don't think violence is the answer
Yeah.
for any of it. That's why I'm part of a political party, and I'm trying to change things with the system,
Absolutely.
within the system.
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually Spike Cohen said it best, and I kind of reiterated some of those same sentiments when it happened, is if you were cheering on Antifa and BLM last year and you're condemning this, then you're a hypocrite. If you're cheering this on, but we're, you know, um, condemning Antifa and all that last year, you're a hypocrite. The only thing that I said that makes January 6th, in my opinion, better than Antifa and stuff like that is it was against government. If you're going to go after somebody, go after the people that are actually oppressing. Don't destroy private businesses and private property. So that's the
I just
only thing, but I'm very much anti-violence as well. So
sure. I think there's too much focus, particularly from the right, on the bad behavior that happened for the BLM protests. There were some property crime, some property rights crime, and yes, we should speak out against that. We should say that's not right. But a vast majority of it was not that. A vast majority of it was peaceful protesting. Here in Atlanta, I mean, you had Mayor Bottom saying go home, and sending the
yep.
National Guard after people, shooting tear gas at people, sending troops after them, and that was while people were being peaceful. And so that we should always be able to support and speak
Yep.
in support of. I was always with those folks. If you want to go trash CNN Center, like, I know lots of people don't like CNN, but also, like, you don't get to trash CNN Center. Like, that's private property. You just don't get to do that. And they did it anyway.
Yeah.
And we can be against that, and we can be pro the movement in general. I think that's fine.
Yeah. I actually I think Mayor Bottoms had a very good stance, at least at the beginning when it started here in Atlanta. I gave her a lot of credit. That very first news conference with T.I. and Killer Mike and all that. I know, right?
Yeah, I know.
But I think that, yeah. Can Killer Mike be the face of calm, right? I think no, but that was a very powerful message that they presented that night, and it was the go home message. And so, and then what, a week or so later, was it Rashard Brooks was shot in the Wendy's?
Yeah.
And then
I live about a mile from that Wendy's, so.
Oh Jesus. Well, and then it was oh man, then it was hands off. Like, they were like on the other side of the issue, they were kind of stoking the fires after that too.
Well, what pissed me off, sorry about that. What pissed me off about that whole press conference and all that was they set up and they said, literally, you are not allowed to be on the streets anymore. Like, they didn't just say go home. They then brought men with guns out and forced you to be at home. And if you weren't at home, they committed violence against you. And I'm like, this is not acceptable treatment of human beings at all. Like, I just don't care what they're doing. This is not fine. Because they basically said, if you're out, you're guilty, and just destroyed the presumption of innocence just because they're of a few bad actors, which is we were founded as a nation to be against that. So I see that kind of stuff, and Mayor Bottoms, I'm so glad she's not going to be here next year. I mean, she's going to be a Fed next year. We all know it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's true. Though I wrote an article when Kamala Harris was named the VP nominee, and I said there were so many better candidates. And I said, if you really wanted to go with a black woman of color, then Mayor Bottoms would have been better than Kamala Harris, but not much better.
Or Tulsi Gabbard.
Well, yes, and
but
I said it. I said at the time. Well, I said at the time, if they really wanted to win, because I thought Donald Trump was going to win that election. I mean, Joe Biden's just such a bad candidate. And he's just a bad president. So bad. True. Yeah, I didn't vote for Trump either election either. Yeah. But there's a lot of times where this is where it's hard being a libertarian. And I don't know if you watched my video. I actually just released a video with Trey Felder the other day about we were talking critical race theory, but we dove a lot into this stuff, into the politics of stuff too, when it came down to it. And we were talking about a lot of that, just the way that as libertarians, you're in this middle ground, and it's like, if you're not 100% against Donald Trump to the left, you're a Trumpist. But if you are critical of Donald Trump, then you're a leftist. And so people can't see past these two extremes, and they want to put you in these extremes, which actually pushes more people to the middle, which is where, as a party, you guys are trying to pull everybody in, right?
Yeah, it's It is hard. I mean, we get called all kinds of names from all kinds of people all day because one of the things that we do, knowing, look, I mean, we knew full well that Jo Jorgensen was not likely going to win the election, but we support her anyway. Well, I
Yep.
supported her anyway. I know lots of people didn't. But we're interested in nuance. We know that you can say, look, there's good things about people, there's bad things about people, about everyone. Even Jo Jorgensen, when she said, it's not enough to not be racist, you must be anti-racist. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I didn't jump ship because I have nuance, right? There was nuance on my side where
Exactly.
I said, but I agree with her about like literally everything else. Like she had a campaign misstep that wasn't like, laughing at people being in jail over cannabis, because that's messed up. By the
Yeah.
way, that's what Barack
Yeah.
Obama did. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that to me, that's like atrocious. So it's like,
Exactly. I'm with you on that, and that's why it's hard. You give people the benefit of the doubt. Like I said, it's libertarians are finicky people.
I know
There's not there's there, nobody. I mean, that's the joke, right? Nobody is a real libertarian. So
right. So so my whole stance is, from minarchist to constitutionalist, and probably not much further. I think we should all be able to work together. I think everyone in
Mhm.
that range should probably be a Libertarian Party member and should be running should be running for office and should be supporting candidates for the Libertarian Party, because we are all moving in the same direction. We all want to reduce the size and scope of government. Some of those people want to
Yep.
reduce it to zero. Some of those people want to reduce it to the Constitution. And some of those people want everything in between, and that's fine. And the truth of the matter is, even if we all band together and work for our entire lifetime, we're probably not even going to get to the constitutionalists. And
Yep.
so there's no reason we shouldn't be banding together to work together. And you know what? If we get to the point where some people have to drop off, if the constitutionalists are like, well, we got where we wanted to get, and they drop off and they start fighting the minarchists and anarchists, uh, that's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
I would love to
Yeah.
be there.
Exactly. That would exactly, because I moved from growing up conservative, very much constitutionalist, wanted to get down to that point. Loved Ron Paul at the time. Didn't like didn't understand foreign. I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't understand foreign policy enough, so I didn't understand. I couldn't get on board with his policy, his foreign policy at that time. And then I served in the military for 7.5 years.
And then you
and
understood it better than he
I
did.
and I got out in 2017, so I was still in 2016, and I didn't vote Republican in 2016.
Right.
I'm not going to say who I voted for because that was a mistake too.
I voted for McCain, so
Yeah.
we've all been there. We all didn't know what we were doing at some point.
I voted for. Oh, I mean, in my past, I voted for McCain and Romney because that's where I was
Oh,
at the time.
yeah.
I mean, I graduated college in 2009. Okay. I didn't understand like Libertarian Party platforms and stuff like that.
Yep.
You didn't understand a lot of that. And honestly, I mean, I think until last year, really, it was last year, the LP has had a bad had a what's it called? It's just been a bad reputation of party, not necessarily libertarians, but the party itself under previous leadership of the party. So I know
Okay.
even Shane has hammered previous leadership when because they start to push. I mean, even last year, Nick Solwork was pushing people out of the party, like actively like pushing people out, like saying, if you don't register as a libertarian, then we don't want you. I mean, I think that was almost his exact statement.
Yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of pointing your guns outward. I don't like a lot of the infighting that's going on. I don't like building a party on, hatred for your fellow libertarians, because there are a lot of different flavors of libertarian. And I think we all come at it from different places. Like I said, I voted for McCain. I never really felt very good about that vote. I never have identified as a Republican, but lots of people have. Lots of people speak the language of the right. I say right. I hate using right left, but sometimes it's helpful. Lots of people speak the language of the right and come to libertarianism. Lots of people speak the language of the left and come to libertarianism and care a lot more about. I used to call myself a left libertarian until I realized that was what the LibSocs, the libertarian socialists, were referring to themselves as, which I was never that. I'm more of a civil libertarian. I'm more of like I come at it from a humanist standpoint. So, I think I speak the language of the left pretty well, and sometimes the right, but mostly the left. And I think we just need all kinds, because it's going to take talking to lots of people in their own language. And when you speak, the opposite language in our crazy dichotomy right now, people just shut off. And so, we have I love our state. So we have, Shane Hazel, who's run for Senate, and he is seeking the Libertarian nomination for governor right now. And he obviously speaks the language of the right very well. He fires up people who just want to be left alone, and cares a lot more about monetary issues and things like that. He's very good at speaking to that. So we also have a guy named Chase Oliver here in Georgia, who ran for U.S. House District 5 last year. He has announced that he's seeking our nomination for Senate for next year. And he speaks the language of the left, but when he ran for House District 5, he was outflanking the sea of Democrats running for that office from the left, saying, you suck at criminal justice reform, because if you actually cared about people, you'd be talking about qualified immunity or ending cash bail or doing some of these other things, where they weren't ready to do that. And so you need, especially depending on region, things like that, you need people speaking different languages. And one of my favorite things in the whole world during the Joe Jorgensen campaign, that whole year where they were both running for office, was when they'd get on the same stage and start talking, and just be like, we couldn't be more different, but we're here together, like fighting for this. Turns out they went to the same high school at the same time. And just, Shane's like, we didn't really get along, and everybody laughs, but it's just amazing to see those two come together to fight for liberty. And I think we need them both. That's all.
I absolutely agree. I think, but I mean, keeping on that topic of election stuff like this, like because as I said on the top, we're kind of the center of the universe right now coming up next year, because not only do we have a Senate seat open, which you said Chase is running for, but we do have a governor seat open, which Shane's running for. So we have these two very big elections coming up that the world's going to be watching, because now Georgia is this all eyes on center, all eyes on Georgia, because we're now this swing state, which everybody's fighting for. So what is the goal for this election season, and what changes are we making in this campaign on these campaigns to get them more out there, get them more publicity, get everything, get the message out there that libertarians should be a third party as well. And I'll leave this open, but I think you can also probably dive into almost even the ballot access and stuff like that. But what are the changes that you guys are looking at?
Well, we want to have libertarians on every single ballot and every single race. This is the goal. I know it's lofty. It's not going to happen in 1 year, but that's the goal. A lot of people don't understand our ballot access woes. They say, why do you always run for president and governor, but you don't run anybody for U.S. House or State Senate? And they don't understand that it actually takes a lot of petitioning, a lot of money, a lot of time just to get on the ballot here in Georgia for those races. That is the major goal, though, is to get on every single into every single office, every single camp. I guess what are we saying here? Into every single election, essentially. We have a pretty good statewide group of people who are looking to run. I'm considering a run for lieutenant governor. I have not made a decision on that yet, but I'm considering it.
Okay.
We have a candidate.
You heard it here first.
What's that?
So
I'll tell anybody
who'll
listen. We have somebody who's interested in Secretary of State who people will be excited about when they can announce that. Attorney General, we actually weirdly have somebody. It's hard to find qualified candidates for Attorney General because it requires you to be a lawyer. A lot of those people are well connected with the major parties. What people don't realize is down ballot, it requires for libertarians, we have ballot access for statewide offices. Other third parties and independents do not. They have to collect about 75,000 signatures to get on the ballot for statewide office. We earned that back in the 90s, and we keep it every year by getting a certain minimum number of votes. So people say we lose every year, but I think we win in some way because we maintain our ballot access. That's a win. It's not the win, it's a win. For districted races, it takes you have to get signatures from 5% of active registered voters in a 6-month period. So for US House, that number equals about 20,000 signatures. For state Senate, it requires about 9,000 signatures. For state House, it's about 2,000 signatures. And it's really double that. So it's really 40,000, 18,000, and 4,000 because they invalidate about half of them because their data sucks. As everyone in Georgia knows, it's constantly reported on. Secretary of State's data sucks. So we go out, we get our signatures, and they invalidate over half of them, and we don't get on the ballot anyway. For 40,000 signatures, you're actually looking at $3 to $5 per signature as well. So you're really looking at $120,000 to times 5, whatever that is. You're looking at a lot of freaking money before you can even get on the ballot. So that's like, not paying for advertising, not paying for yard signs, not paying for anything else. You're paying for signature gatherers to go out and get your signatures. No third party has done it since the 1940s when they put the law on the books. So we've been fighting that. We actually had a lawsuit we've been fighting for the last 3 or 4 years now. And we have recently won that lawsuit. The judge ruled it unconstitutional. After ruling it constitutional, then we what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, my brain's not working. We took it to the higher court. We appealed it.
Oh yeah, you appealed it.
Yeah, the higher court basically said, yeah, you're right, they didn't do it right. So they vacated the original one, sent it back, and then the judge re-looked at it the way they told him to and said, you're right, it's unconstitutional. So they asked us for the remedy. We said we would like to not have any signatures. And then the Secretary of State responded to that and said, yeah, we still think it's constitutional. So we think they should have to do all the signatures. And now we're just sort of waiting on the judge to come back. But basically, we think we don't know what the judge is going to do. It could be anywhere between 0, 2,000 signatures. They could come back and do nothing. I mean, that could happen. Yeah. That seems weird if they said it's unconstitutional and then do nothing. That doesn't make a ton of sense. But the state sucks, so they might do it. We're hopeful that it gets reduced enough where we can have somebody on the ballot for every U.S. House race. That would be a giant thing for us. So, and then my focus generally is recruiting people for state house. The 2,000 signatures is doable, and it's where we can have an impact. 60% of those races go unopposed every year, which represents 80% of Georgia. And we're not the third party. We're just the second person on the ballot at that point. We're just opposing typically unopposed people. So that's where I really think that we could have some success if we really pumped our resources in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Now on that as well, because you guys were doing something with LP National last week, right? So maybe you got a little bit more insight. Now, actually, are you on Clubhouse?
I am, but I've only really done 1 or 2 things, and the first major one I would listen to was the Dave Smith, Justin Amash, and JBH, and it was awesome.
That's the one I was actually gonna get at. So.
Cool.
because they were talking these same issues last week, and actually Dave Smith brought up it was a little bit different than what most libertarians want to hear, and it was we absolutely need to focus on national elections, not state and local elections, because if you can get your name out nationally, that's where we have to grow the party is at a national level. You growing it from the grassroots is too like in what you're saying right now is it's almost too difficult because of the signature requirements and stuff like that. So if you can get on these big ticket ballots and get the message out there, then that's a win if you can get people to vote. And I actually think one of the biggest things that we have to be telling people in these election cycles, because what we see over and over and over is they will tell poll people one thing and then they'll vote a different way, right? Because they get sucked into this lesser of two evils, where I think the people need to be completely honest with the poll workers to give other people more confidence to actually go into the polls and vote. So if we start seeing 10, 12, 13, 14%, maybe more people will be like, well, maybe it's worth my vote to go this way, and it's not a vote against, because a lot of people, the average person that's not in politics, they like our message, but they don't want to waste their vote because they're getting sucked into that. You're wasting your vote if you're voting for third parties.
Right. Unfortunately, Dave Smith is partially right. I'm partially right, because what we have to do is all of the things. That's really what it comes down to, is the top of the ticket. Even if we're not winning, those are the people who are getting the media attention, to Dave Smith's point, and they're the ones who are going to bring the spotlight to the Libertarian Party and the Libertarians in a way that the local candidates simply can't, because they're just not covered at all. You know, a lot of state house reps who win, who are in big contested races, still don't get covered by their own media. The media likes to cover the top of the ticket. So my strategy is to have, and this is not an endorsement, so don't have this as support for anybody or anything like that, but having somebody, big and flashy at the top, like Shane, who brings the spotlight, who drags the spotlight, whether it wants to be there or not, right on over to him, who then can share it, which he has also done a magnificent job of doing. He likes to promote people who don't necessarily have a platform, and have a lot of good things to say, which I love about him. But that's what we really need at the top of the ticket, are people willing to drag the spotlight over and then share it, and get people to say, look, I love you, Shane. I'm not willing to vote for you because, well, I can't let Stacey Abrams or Brian Kemp win. I just can't let it happen. So I'm not willing to vote for you. And Shane actually convinced them to vote for everybody else down ticket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
That's what our ticket looks like. I was going to say it earlier, where we do typically do better down ballot. You talked about Joe Jorgensen's election results and versus Shane Hazel's, and what we see. So what the major parties see, what the old parties see, is like a upside down pyramid. They get the most at the top, and then they get voters who just come in and vote for president and then like walk out the door and don't vote for anybody else. Where we get is people vote for the most important person they think they can vote for president, without losing, quote unquote losing. And then down ballot, they say, oh, I can take a shot at the Libertarian here. And so our Public Service Commission candidates will typically do better than everybody else, because nobody cares or knows what they do, even though it's a really important position. I ran for it in 2018.
So here's a question, kind of going back to because like you said, Dave Smith, Justin Amash, and then we're all talking on Clubhouse, and the real question though is, do you know, and has there been much talk about Justin Amash's future role in the party? Like, where is he at when it comes to being in the party? I know he's obviously active. He's actively pushing liberty. He's pushing liberty principles. Not sure though if he's where he's at in terms of talking and running like with leadership,
Yeah.
if you can talk about it.
Well, I'm not in the know. I'm not in that kind of club. I'm really worried about Georgia, and I let everybody know that so they don't bog me down with the details.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the people who probably know more about Justin Amash are keeping pretty tight-lipped about it.
Yep.
But if you look at what he's doing, he's going to conventions. He's speaking to libertarians who will have the ability to vote at the national convention, which is key. You have to earn our nomination at the national convention to become our presidential candidate. And I think he is laying the groundwork to run. But like I said, I don't actually know. I'm just sort of reading the tea leaves. I'm looking at what he's doing,
Yeah.
and I think it makes sense that is maybe what he's doing.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying too, because he is very active on Clubhouse and getting those types of conversations going and stuff like
Yep.
that. He was right there to welcome Dave Smith on there, and then Spike joined. And I mean, I didn't even know. I think that was one of the things that I wish I would have known more about in the last election. I didn't really know much about Spike Cohen's, like where he stood and like what his
Yeah.
policies were, and he's brilliant. I mean,
Oh my God, he's the future of the party. I love Spike.
No,
I love
exactly.
Spike.
So I mean, like him and like an Amash Spike ticket would be almost like a dream for the next election. Honestly, I think.
and here is where again, there's no endorsements here, but it's what I was saying earlier, where you want somebody who can drag the spotlight over, which I think Justin Amash has proven he can, and then somebody who can really speak to it, which would be Spike. And because Spike just has, I mean, he just has this way of connecting with people when he speaks, of bringing humanity to libertarian ideas in a way that we have needed for a really long time. He talks about current events in a way that brings everybody on board. I don't know anybody from, this caucus or that caucus or no caucus at all, because I'm caucusless, who doesn't just love him.
Yeah.
I mean, we all love him. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Well, and see, I was gonna go to the caucuses because you bring those up, right? Caucuses are kind of weird to me when it comes to the Libertarian Party, right? It just seems kind of weird. It's not really because it's almost separating libertarians into camps, and we kind of don't do that. We kind of do it. We're kind of all individuals. We don't. I mean, me and most libertarians, I think, don't really care about caucuses and stuff like that. But then, like, I don't think me and you are both kind of involved on a daily basis on Twitter and everything like that, and seeing what's going on within the infighting, like you mentioned earlier. I don't think the average person sees all the infighting stuff like that.
Thank God.
Because the Mrs. Caucus has just exploded, right? I mean, it's kind of taken over a lot of the party. But then they like stuff from the LPC the other day on Twitter, and they shared it. So it's like there's common ground. It's not like we're always fighting, but I think what really even got people noticing the caucuses was the whole issue in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's why they were so popular for a little while, is because they were blocked from voting for like 2 years or something. Wasn't that what happened?
Well,
yeah,
no,
let me know what happened.
Yeah, so party bylaws typically have rules in place that protect the party from takeovers from the outside. So Pennsylvania's rule says if you've only been a member for less than 180 days, you don't actually get voting rights. Georgia actually has the same rule. It's 367 days. It's even more. We said basically if you haven't been for longer than a year, you don't have voting rights. It is also traditionally suspended, that rule, if there are no takeover people. But basically you look around the room, you say, okay, there's half this group is wearing MAGA hats. Maybe we don't suspend the rule this time. And you just let it go. And then it's to protect the party. And so what happened in Pennsylvania is the establishment there, not the establishment, the longer time members, I should say, because I think the establishment ran a good convention. I might piss some people off with that, but They ran by the rules, and the chair there did what the body said based on the bylaws, and there's no room to actually change that. So there's not a lot of what he could do. But basically, we've got all these rules to keep people from voting who are quote unquote taking over, to protect the party. And I think sometimes it makes sense. Clearly, if you're using those rules against other libertarians, you are not using them the way that they were intended, which has always been my concern. I actually hate that rule a lot. I think that basically there's a presumption when you implement a rule like that, that we have power that we don't have. I think people don't realize that we are tiny. It's like, stop it, stop. We're tiny. Nobody wants what little power we have. It doesn't make any sense. So and then if we did have that power, we would also have the numbers to prevent it with just votes. You couldn't have 100 people show up, because you'd literally have already like 300 people showing up. So like, it would be hard to take over at that point. So I hate those rules a lot. I've asked my bylaws committee to review them. I would like to get rid of them, but I don't think that'll pass. So, but that's what happened in Pennsylvania. They use rules to stop takeovers, to stop people who are libertarians from voting. Now, to be fair, they did come say they were trying to take over. So there's that, but
that's true as well. But like, what was I gonna say?
Sorry,
but
I tend to go on.
It's fine. No, I mean, no, I love the rambling. It's great. It's great conversation. I think when it comes to, I think we're going to see good strides and people starting to come together, right? Because it was actually Dave Smith who said, who was championing the Mrs. Caucus, right? He was kind of the promoter of it from the beginning, and that's my understanding. And when we talk about the infighting stuff like that, like literally right before I came on here, I saw his tweet that said, I know there's a lot of infighting in the Libertarian Party right now, but then he mentioned that him, Spike Cohen, and Justin Amash had an amazing conversation on Clubhouse the other day, and we're working together to start bringing everything together so we can work together. So I think that might be the first step to like uniting people under the same banner, right?
Well, and I can tell you here in Georgia, there was a little bit of bad blood between me and Michael Heiss, who is I guess the chair of the Mises Caucus, the National Mises Caucus. But generally that's kind of, that's personal. And so there's some personal issues there. And I have been, totally cool with what's been going on in Georgia. I think Georgia is a Mises state. I think if we ran a convention today, we would be majority Mises for sure. If we weren't at our convention, I actually had to miss our convention due to a COVID scare. But so I think if we had, like I said, we're a Mises state, and I can tell you that it's not been terrible. They're bringing people on board. They're bringing active people on board. They're starting affiliates. They're becoming members, paying in, and supporting the party in a really good way. I've struggled a little bit with, basically communicating that I'm not an enemy. We're not the enemy, because the recruitment efforts tend to be that the Libertarian Party is the enemy. So like, come on board so we can change it. And I'm like, well, you don't really have to change it here. Literally just show up. And what do you want to do? Because let me see if I can give you the keys to a brand new car to do what you want to do. And so that's been my message throughout. I actually only won my chairmanship by 1 vote. And it was because there was some organization behind in the Mises Caucus to replace me. And what I did was I actually held a town hall and invited all of them to come. I put the word out and said, hey, all the Mises Caucus people, come to this town hall. Let's talk. And because I think that you think that I'm, some kind of enemy, but really like, tell me what you want. And so now those guys, they run our social media. They're helping plan the convention. They're already getting plugged in good ways, and they're helping out. And so I'm just like, I'm embracing it. I just think it's
Yeah.
fine. If you want to show up and do the work, I don't care what you call yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And see, that's the thing is if I was to align with something, it would probably be more on that side of things. And it's because, like we talked about earlier, the publicity issues that the party has had in the past. I think this is the response to some of the old leadership, not necessarily the new leadership that's come in lately, um as well. Though, like I was saying, I think caucuses are kind of weird. And this is the last thing I was gonna ask you was, what do you say to somebody like me who I am not I'm not a registered member of the party? And the
You should
reason
change
is
that.
because it kind of it goes against the libertarian nature in me, right? We don't want to subscribe to a single party because we don't typically political parties, they want this cult like mentality where you even if you disagree, you're going to follow that party no matter what. So it kind of goes against that, and which is probably a lot of the reason why registered members stay low in the Libertarian Party, because even though there's a lot of libertarians, it kind of goes against that way of life that we kind of built ourselves. It's our nature to not want to be part of a party, right?
Right. Yeah. We're like, leave us alone. Also, let's congregate. No.
Exactly. That's what I mean. And honestly, so we were talking about the event that we were hanging out last year and didn't even realize it was each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Jorgensen campaign event. And I told Shane the exact same thing. I said, it's really because you guys were standing on stage trying to get people to, join the party and
Right.
get active
Yeah.
memberships and stuff like that. And I leaned over to Shane and said, it's really hard to get libertarians to come onto a party because join a party and pay to a party when it just goes against our nature. And I think Shane actually used that in his speech because he was like, yeah, I know it's really hard, but it really helps out. So
Yeah. No,
like,
I mean,
because
we need money.
Shane just goes off the cuff anyway, so he's just like, I
The
know
man.
it's against the libertarian nature, but that's a really good cause. And then he went into his full speech.
I mean, I felt really bad for Joe that she had to speak after him, honestly, because like he had me ready to run through a wall, and then she came on and sort of sucked the air out of the room a little bit, but not because of bad ideas, just delivery.
No,
His delivery,
I
he's just
agree.
like he's so hype.
Everything. Oh yeah, he is like a firecracker going off, right?
Yeah. So my answer to that would be, I know it's tough, and what I would say is if the party is saying the things that you want them to say, that you want us to say, then by all means you should support us, and that doesn't mean that you support us forever. Like if we leave you, leave us, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like. And that doesn't mean like because one person said one bad thing, we left you. I don't think that's very fair. Um,
No.
and I don't think that you should vote for the lesser of three evils either. And so I'm not asking you to vote for Dick Cheney or anything if he runs as a libertarian. Like that would be dumb. But if somebody makes one gaffe or generally has that was a jab at Nick Sarwark, by the way. So, um,
I love it.
like I think that you can still come in and build the party that you want to build. We are very small right now. All throughout the states, we are looking for people to build county affiliates, to join the state affiliate, to shape what we're doing, to shape what we're saying. A lot of us aren't saying very much right now because one, we want to do something, but we don't necessarily know how to. Two, we don't have the money to get out our message so much, so we need the support for that. But we want to start these local affiliates. We want to empower people. We want to create a platform to give you a voice. And so if you want to come out here, I actually, Sarah, I've put now in like my focused Twitter group. And I don't
Oh,
know if you've
awesome.
noticed, but I've started sharing and liking your stuff more often because what I
That's
want
good.
to
Yeah,
do is promote Georgia libertarians. I want to make sure that people
absolutely.
here are being platformed. I don't necessarily know if what you're saying is perfect every time, but that I want to platform you. I want to make sure that you are
Yep,
speaking to our audience and that they know you're here. So, that's
absolutely.
my
And I
answer is I
appreciate
think
that.
support us because we want to support libertarians. And if we ever are not doing that, it's not that hard to actually change things, or just, stop. stop supporting us if we stop supporting you. So
Absolutely. That's a good answer. I do like that. And I had, like we were talking about earlier, I've been very libertarian focused most of my life, or at least in my voting life, but just in 2016 was the first time I voted third party. And I was one of those people that was a Johnson supporter and then jumped ship because he made way too many gaffes in the party. So it was like, I I can't support completely now, you know. So I think
I loved
Jorgensen was
Gary Johnson so much. Bill Weld is a different story, but I loved Gary Johnson. I thought his Aleppo gaff was just not a big deal. When
I
he
didn't think it was as big of a deal either. I just think then all of a sudden it started turning into just weird stuff. And then when I think my last straw was when he almost endorsed Hillary Clinton. It was like,
Bill Weld did
what?
that, not Gary Johnson. Yeah,
It
Bill
was,
Weld
oh
was,
yeah.
yeah. So Bill Weld endorsed me in 2018, and it stood out to me. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I typically don't care. I wrote his endorsement quote, because that's kind of how things are done sometimes. But I said something about the crony politicians in Georgia or something, and he wouldn't let me say the word crony. His people came back and said, "Oh, he doesn't want that word." I'm like, "It's important. It's an important word here." I'm running for Public Service Commission. They regulate utilities. They're crony to the core, and and he wouldn't let me use it, and I was just sort of like, "Man, this kind of sucks." Like, this is sort of my line.
I mean, that's great. I think, and on a different note too, talking about like campaign finances and stuff like that, because that's one of the things I see as being one of the biggest issues in the country, period, is campaign finance. And it's going to take an act of, well, not an act of Congress, it's probably going to take an act of God to change finance reforms. But I mean, I believe that no company should be able to, give money to a political candidate, period.
Yeah.
That creates corporatism and money laundering through corporate means, right?
So
then
do you have more? I can answer later.
I was just gonna say, and then the other thing is, I don't think anybody should be able to donate to a campaign if they're not in the district to be able to vote in that election.
Yeah. So I am for radical free speech all the time. I think campaign giving is speech, and I think anyone should be able to give to any campaign in any amount for any reason. I do think it should be tracked. But I will give the example of my Public Service Commission run, where they are not allowed to receive money from any entity that they regulate. So Georgia Power is the big one. But if you go look through the contribution records, the law firm that represents Georgia Power donates max every year. The head, the CEO donates personally. His wife donates. Their 3 kids donate. Every lawyer at the law firm donates personally. They get around it and they hide it. It's even easier to hide than if they just said, "Hey, we're going to be Georgia Power. We're going to donate $20,000 or $100,000 or whatever." Instead, they hide it. And when I ask about it, so when I was in the debate in Georgia, they allow every candidate to ask any candidate one question. And I laid it out that basically he was receiving campaign contributions from Georgia Power. And all he did was attack the source. The people who did the work were a little left-leaning organization in the media. He did not really deny it, but it didn't matter. Nobody cared. I couldn't make anybody care because they're like, "That's not Georgia Power." And I'm like, "But it is." Like, what do you mean? Like, so what they do is they find a way. When you create laws, there's, the seen and the unseen. And what ends up happening is you hide that giving rather than stopping it.
Yeah. That's absolutely true as well, I guess. And I could even say, if you receive public funds, then you can't give, because then that is basically money laundering, right?
Yeah.
You're giving money to a politician to give you more money, right?
Yeah, no, that actually does make a lot of sense.
but yeah, so kind of going back to circling back around to what we were talking about how we see our platforms and stuff like that. And that's really where I see this platform too, is just to kind of push libertarian ideas. And I love having you guys come on, and just giving like you guys a voice to be able to just speak to the people and get more people in here into the chat and stuff like that, so we can get more questions in here and do stuff like that. I think that's where my role in this, even if I'm not part of the party, I think I can give at least something, somewhat of a perspective, and give a voice to you guys, who you guys have a big voice, but sometimes you guys are missing some corners as well. And
Yep.
That's where I'm at.
We gotta get you running for office. That's what we gotta
do. Yeah. It is kind of ironic too, because like last week, the head of the Georgia log cabin Republicans contacted me to talk as well. So I think it'll be interesting to bring a libertarian voice to a conversation like that as well. And that's why, again, I don't want to just focus just on libertarian candidates as well. I want to show everybody. I think everybody should be able to make their own decisions, give people information, make their own decisions, and bring and make the most informed vote for your values, I guess.
Yeah. Is the Georgia Republican Party allowing them, the Georgia log cabin Republicans, to table at this point? I think I remember like 2 years ago they were not allowed to table at their convention. They said they didn't want them there.
I'm not sure. That is a good question that I will have to ask him, because I don't know.
Yeah.
I can see it, because especially just knowing, the log cabin Republicans are kind of the LGBT wing of the party, and gay marriage is still listed as a no on their party platform for Republicans. Jesus. So I think I'm like 90% sure of that. And it was, ironically, I think it was Donald Trump that had mentioned taking it off of the party.
Yeah,
website,
I think that's done and gone, guys. So
yeah,
it's we're past that.
I think right now you are going to see an influx of people start coming in, because social conservatives have reared their heads again. And a lot of people, even in the walk away movement, are starting to walk away from the Republicans, because they're being pushed away by social conservatives. And I've seen people like Carlin Borisenko and Mike Harlow and a lot of those people who were out there and walk away. And I know them pretty well. I communicate and stuff with them. They've become friends of mine. Even Ariel Scarcella, who is like one of my best friends, has been talking about, she's a libertarian. And so when they start, popping up and doing that, it's a great opportunity for the party to start being like, hey, start getting those voices in to start talking to you guys one-on-one, and because they have a huge platform that they're going on, that they're pushing. So I think that's a great opportunity. And I'll be talking some of these issues with these people here in the future as well.
Awesome.
Not saying too much, not getting my hopes up too much, but I do have a stacked lineup of liberty-minded people coming up at least the next 4 months on my channel. Cool. Not live streams. We're gonna be doing videos, but I have about 4 guests ready to go. And like I said, even Trey, who I released a video with 2 days ago, is liberty-minded as well, and he's considers himself a libertarian. So all these guests it's a great way for the party to kind of see some of the more national figures. I mean, Dave Smith is just one guy, but you have this whole campaign that, I mean, what they did for Donald Trump was amazing. When Donald Trump wins, more LGBT voters, more Black voters, more of these minority voters in 2020 than he did in 2019, more percentage wise, and the only demographic that Joe Biden won more of than Clinton did in 2016 was among straight white men. Mm-hmm. So when social conservatives start pushing those people away, the Libertarian Party is there to snatch them up, right? Because a lot of these people are more small government minded, but they're sucked into this duopoly and they need somewhere to go. So I think that is a huge opportunity for us to grow the party as well.
I would hope that anyone that's liberty minded that joins the Republican Party immediately feels just icky, not to use the technical term, right? So you have like Rand Paul and Mike Lee, who are generally pretty decent as far as like representatives go, and they're in Georgia campaigning for Senator Perdue last year, and it's like, you have to support some pretty atrocious politicians in order to even get your foot in the door. And if you don't, they will guilt you. They'll kick you out. They'll say, you're not true here. You're a rhino. You're whatever. Get out. And they might be right. I think that this is what the phrase I used to get Shane to come over to the Libertarian Party is he was calling everybody a rhino, and I said, Shane, I need to tell you something. You're the rhino. Come home to the Libertarian Party already, because this is where you belong. This is where home is. This is where you won't get pushed around. This is where you won't get, campaigned against by your own damn people. Come on over, come home. And sure enough, he's here and he's found a home and he's found just a wall of support, which has been awesome. And
and he has become like you said, he has become the voice, I think, of the Georgia party right now. And that's why he's running for governor, because he should be the voice, right? Is he? I mean, like we said,
he came over, we embraced him.
And that's always been what's I mentioned it to Austin Peterson a couple weeks ago the same way. I've been duped way too many times by liberty-minded Republicans to really trust them enough to vote for them. I mean, I made some bad votes in my day, but voting for Joe Jorgensen was probably the best one I've done yet. So because I felt good about it, because people that I have supported in the past, I mean, I've supported Ted Cruz. I've supported what's his name down in Texas. But it's like, as soon as Donald Trump got into office, they completely got rid of their values and became just part of the establishment. There's maybe, Rand Paul, other than what you were talking about, he's still pretty solid. He's taken some heat, but you see Thomas Massey took a lot of heat rounds from Trump. And he still stood.
He got primaried.
Exactly. And then obviously what happened to Justin Amash is prime example of what happens when you go against somebody who has as much influence as Donald Trump does or did in the party.
Amash just said, I'm not doing it. I'm not supporting these people anymore because they don't really support me. So he came home.
And I think I think he is a great person. I mean, I'm from Michigan, and so I'm originally from Michigan. My whole family's up there. So I kind of knew a little bit, I mean, talking to family and stuff up there about him, which are conservative. So they were kind of on the bandwagon of Trump a little bit more because they're more they're conservatives and not completely libertarians. But, the only issue I actually had with Justin Amash was he seemed to take what happened personal, because I didn't agree that Trump committed any impeachable offenses, and even after there was no evidence, he still voted for it. I think that was more of a spite vote than a values vote and a constitutional vote.
I sort of, I sided with Justin Amash on a lot of that stuff and agreed with him, but only, I didn't. If you go back, you look at my Twitter, I probably didn't talk about it very much. I didn't really care a whole lot, one way or another. I was like, oh, we're going to get rid of, these corrupt people and we're going to get more corrupt people. It's no big deal. Like, it's damned if we do, damned if we don't. So why am I going to spend a bunch of political capital on two parties that I don't belong to and don't want to be part of? And so I sort of got frustrated with Justin
Yep.
Amash because I feel like he hung on it too much and just didn't talk about
Yep.
enough, other things. I feel like he could have talked about other things and done pretty well for himself and still like left the, Republican Party and all that stuff. I just,
Yep.
I was
Yeah.
a little upset with him about that, but also I agreed with him. So
I yeah, that's where I was as well. I think I think that's where most libertarians felt about it, and
yeah,
that's why I think when he talked about running for election last time, they were still in that mindset of they they weren't ready to accept him fully into the party because of just what he did in that area, I think, and all the criticism he was getting, which now time has passed and now he's actually pushing stuff right. And I think him, like you said, him and Spike Cohen are probably the futures of the party, and they're going to
yeah.
do great things for the party here within the next few years. They're already starting to plan, and it's really good. Yeah, with that whole thing with Donald Trump, I actually agreed with what Tulsi Gabbard did and voted present,
Oh yeah,
because in her statement was she doesn't think he committed an impeachable offense, but she doesn't want to support what he did either, which
yeah.
was absolutely the right way to go, I think.
I
Which
just
Democrats hammered her.
I think presidents commit impeachable offenses on the daily, and they should get impeached like all the damn time. And it's pretty atrocious that we waited to do it for whatever we waited to do it for. I don't even remember what we impeached him for at this
Oh,
point. But
the insurrection. Well, that one, no,
that
that
was
was
the second
still
one.
Russian. So the Russian conclusion, and then the
Oh yeah, the
insurrection,
Russian collusion
which,
one. Oh, but Tulsi was a Russian agent too, remember? So of course she didn't think he did it.
of course,
So
of course,
they
of
were they were
course.
they were in it together.
And now we're looking at Chinagate, right? The Wuhan stuff going on, which that's more collusion than anything when it comes
I'm so
to.
pissed. That makes me so mad. I'm so the voice of reason on all this stuff, but like I don't claim to know where it came from or anything like that, but the media for over a year has been blacklisting people who even suggested that it may be man-made, that it may have escaped from a lab.
Oh,
And
yeah.
is that what you were talking about? I mean,
Oh yeah. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
okay, cool. And then now they're going back and like stealth editing their articles and not bothering to apologize to anybody that they canceled or blocked from wherever. And it's just insane to me. I'm like, this is clearly politicized and is such a prime example of why we do not want healthcare in the political sphere, because the incentives are just so screwed up. And
Yeah.
this is it's bad news. We just should not do this.
No, absolutely. Well, and now it's even worse than what you're saying too, because it's not even just them going back and shadow changing their articles and stuff. It's now even social media. If you post a picture of the Fauci emails, they're getting taken down. Like
And it's a
like
direct source. It's literally a direct
yeah,
source.
it's exactly what it is, and they're like, there's not enough context behind this, or something like that is what's going on with a lot of them, and you're just like, it's so blatant, and it's um this is what he said.
Yeah.
And I think I am curious, and you might know this too, but he lied last week on the floor of the Senate to Rand Paul about gain of use or gain of function research.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if isn't that an under oath interview? Like,
Yeah.
isn't that perjury?
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. It seems like it should be.
Like, it seems like it. He lied to a senator of the United States.
Yeah.
Right to his face, and that he didn't know that it wasn't gain of use. And then in his emails from last year, his person told him that it was gain of function or something.
Yeah. It was in an email. He
It,
used the term even. He said, since we stopped doing that or something, implying that they
yeah.
did do it. So
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then like I read like the email about masks. I'm like, imagine having an advisor that tells you this. You go out and you spread that, and you say masks don't work because the virus is too small and goes right through most of the masks. And then that same advisor goes on and said, no, I never said that. And it's just, Trump being Trump and saying what he thinks I said, and then you see the emails and you're like, wait a second.
He did. He told Trump that, and yeah, exactly. So it's this like terrible politicization of healthcare, which is just it's not the way it should happen. And I was critical of the way Trump handled that at all, because early on the respirators he had the government buy them up, and then was delivering them to hospitals that like messaged him saying they needed them, and all the N95 masks they bought those up. Pumping money into the vaccine in general was, not the way that we should do it, like public money into it. The Operation Warp Drive, and then centrally planning and distributing it through public networks to distribute the healthcare. I'm like, this is nationalized healthcare. This is literally socialism. This is exactly what it is.
Yeah. At the same time, claiming that you're gonna let the states handle it. And
right.
It's a 10th Amendment thing, right? It was. And I mean, the whole coronavirus response was the exact reason why we don't trust Republicans,
Yeah.
It is because, I mean,
never go full Democrat.
It grew government so large. And I think that, I mean, I've talked conspiracy theories and stuff like that, never really gone down the rabbit hole of what the real conspiracy theories could be, like China released it on purpose. And
that's the one. Birds aren't real. That's the only one that's real.
Because I mean, but you can see China doing something like that on purpose and to spread communism, because they know how world leaders are going to react to a pandemic like this.
Yeah, maybe. I don't like doing it, the conspiracy stuff, because I don't know enough. That's my thing is, I got vaccinated, and I did it because I thought that, given my risk profile, it probably wouldn't hurt me to do it. I knew I'd be a lot more able to move about in public. I didn't necessarily know if it would help me, but I also, like I said, figured it wouldn't hurt me. Easy for me to take time out of my day to go do. So I went ahead and did it. I don't claim to be able to make that decision for anybody else. I'm not a doctor. I would not suggest that anybody get the vaccine. I wouldn't suggest that they don't, because I don't know. I'm an IT project manager. I have no expertise whatsoever in this. And I made a decision for myself, and I discussed it with my partner. And that's the only person that helped me discuss this. So
absolutely. I'm in the same boat. I got vaccinated for very personal reasons. I'm having surgery in the fall, and I didn't want it to get canceled, because it would be my luck to get I would get COVID the week before I go up there, because I didn't change. I really didn't change my life at all during the pandemic. I did what I wanted. I had two COVID scares, and it was kind of what it was. If I got it, I got it. But again, being former military, you kind of have a different view on life in general. And that was the other reason why I didn't mind getting it, because when I was in the military, I got jabbed with all sorts of stuff. I'm like talking to people, and they're like telling me what their side effects were, and their arms hurt, and I'm like, oh, that kind of sounds like the anthrax vaccine that I've gotten like 3 of. And they're like, anthrax vaccine? I'm like, yeah.
I'm terrified of needles. I hate them so much.
But okay. I think is there anything else you want to discuss before we cut this?
I think we covered all the major topics we sort of talked about talking about. So I'm
yeah. I mean, my whole list is gone, which is actually pretty good, because usually we just go off on everything, right?
Yeah. Cool.
Where what links do you want people to go to? I think I put a bunch of links already in the comment
so on Facebook and Twitter, I'm Graham4GA. That's the number 4 and then GA. And so you can find me there. You can go to if you're in Georgia, or if you're not, we actually accept members from anywhere. You can go to lpgeorgia.com/membership, join members. LP Georgia is on Facebook and Twitter as well. So yeah, come support us and check out what I have to say. That's that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go do your research. Do your research before you actually make a decision to vote, and vote your conscience is really all I can, the only advice I can give you when it comes to voting is vote your conscience, vote your values. If you are comfortable with the decisions that are made after that person is elected, then vote it.
Right? And if you have any questions about anything that's going on, anything we talked about, or anything that's going on in the Libertarian Party, I am decently plugged in. So you can hit me up on Twitter or Facebook on DMs, or you can email me, ryan.graham@lpgeorgia.com. I'm happy. I'm very responsive and happy to answer any questions. You can do it in public too if you want. That's fine too. I don't care. I'm pretty honest. Yeah, I'm pretty like I'm like the worst politician ever, which may be why I joined the Libertarian Party. But I'm pretty blunt.
That's why I can't run for election, because I'm way too honest.
Yeah, well, you asked me.
Well, actually, I actually think Shane's more honest than I am. So
everyone always goes to the worst thing. They're always like, "Well, what do you think about legalizing heroin?" I'm like, look, I'm not out there campaigning to legalize heroin, but like, you asked, so I'm gonna answer, and you're gonna have to deal with it. And they're like, why are you talking about legalizing heroin? I'm like, you asked me, and I answered. You know, like, what are you talking about? What am I bringing that?
And that is what I mean. We have answers for that stuff. So.
Yeah. Would you rather I didn't answer you or lied? I don't think so.
No, I'm not going to play this game. I have an answer, and
right.
It goes along with libertarian philosophies, and that's it. When they can't get you in a gotcha question, they'll attack you because you're actually answering the question. You're absolutely right. And it's kind of funny because I think I just joined both Facebook groups for the party like a month ago. So
awesome.
It's really good. I think the like I said, the links are in the description. If you're watching this, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because like I said, I have a lot of great viewers coming on here in the next few weeks, and hopefully start doing some more live streams and stuff like that. I'm trying to do like a video a week, and live streams are extra to videos for special events, because it just gets people so they can ask the person that I'm interviewing questions. So again, thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
Click subscribe, go and follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you guys are at. All the links are below.